Hey, I've been thinking about something today that I think is a pretty good model for what's going on with the world right now in lots of different areas, and also a way to kind of think about what we're doing and what kinds of things we should be building. I'm thinking of it as the trampoline effect. Okay, so what's the trampoline effect? Here's what happened today. Basically, I was flipping through my phone, and I wanted to see how my activity level has changed since kind of before the pandemic and then during the pandemic and then now. And so I posted this on LinkedIn. I basically looked through my phone and I just wanted to see, okay, how many steps a day have I walked in November? I just wanted to compare November 2019, November 2020, and this past November 2021, and just see the number of steps. So basically, my phone says that November 2019, normal year, pre-pandemic, office culture back in San Francisco, I was walking about 6,700 steps a day. And then November 2020, this was like lockdown, working at home, stuck at home. It fell to about 1,400 steps a day. But then last month, I averaged about 15,000 steps a day. And that's the new out of office life in Bentonville. Basically, I'm just walking around to lots of places, getting coffee and so on, and feeling more productive than ever, but also healthier than ever. So I posted this on LinkedIn, and this guy Martin, who I don't know, replied with something like this, with a graphic like this, kind of bigger, which he just kind of redrew the graphic that I made, and I think this is pretty cool. He just made it kind of like a trampoline, and it made me realize that actually this may be going on a lot, right? There may be a lot of, not maybe, there are a lot of things in the world that have followed this trajectory, where basically we were at a certain point, pre-pandemic, just certain kind of realities that have been baked in. We hadn't really questioned them. It's just the way the world worked. And then the pandemic was such a sharp reset. It was so different that a lot of things became much worse early on in those first few months. But then because of that reset, it kind of gave people the opportunity to rethink, to rebuild, to question old assumptions. And a lot of things now are better than they ever were. And we kind of see examples of this everywhere. Obviously, it's the company we're building, right? We're saying communication and productivity can be better than they ever were if you adopt this synchronous and asynchronous video and going back and forth. But it's also true of, this trampoline pattern is true of, fundraising for startups. It's true of just yesterday. I was, during all my walking, I listened to podcasts. I was listening to this podcast from the Wall Street Journal called How the Pandemic Helped Fix Retail, which is kind of interesting. Its basic premise was, retail was kind of suffering before the pandemic, but it was sort of at a steady state, but declining slowly. Just actual in-person retail stores. And then it got almost wiped out during the pandemic. The first, half a year was terrible for retailers. Like a lot of them closed down, a lot of them went out of business. But actually now the pandemic caused them to fix a lot of things. Some examples that they gave are like discounting culture and other things that were just unsustainable habits. And retail right now is actually, it's actually pretty strong. And this model, right, of like we were at a steady state before, and then everything dropped, everything got worse. A lot of things got worse in the pandemic, but now many of those things are bouncing back and back to better than they ever were because it was such a sharp reset. It let us focus on how to actually make things better and not be attached to previous ways of doing things. And then again, of course, just like Martin's picture shows, hopefully it'll keep going up. Hopefully it'll keep getting better in 2022 and beyond. And I think this is just an elegant way of thinking about the world right now. An elegant way of having an investment hypothesis. What other things follow this trend? What other kinds of things are there in life that they were at some level, and then they got really badly jolted during the pandemic, but now there's an opportunity to rebuild them and make them better than ever. And of course, this isn't a passive thing. You don't just get to sit back and wait for some things to bounce back and be better than ever. We have to build them with what I've been talking about as this outlook of rigorous optimism. Rigorous optimism meaning that the world can be made better, the world will be made better, and it's your job to do so. It's our job to do so. This is not a passive thing that happens to us. We are not bystanders in the world. We are lucky enough to have agency to make it better. And something like the hard reset that we all just went through actually gives us a great opportunity to do that. And at a high level, that's what we're trying to do with mmhmm, with all of the companies that All Turtles works with. And I want to challenge all of you to think about the trampoline effect. What other things can we be looking at that have the potential to being built back at a much better level, at a much higher level than they ever were before? Thanks.